So how are our digital lives actually transforming? I mean, really changing day by day. And what does that truly mean for our basic freedoms? Today, we're really diving deep into something, well, pretty urgent. It's this global push for digital identity, yeah? And strict age verification, plus this huge wave of content regulation. It's coming from governments, sure, but also from, big private companies.
We're going to try and unpack this really complex web of new laws, tech, all the controversies shaping how we experience things online. We're talking Australia, Europe, and, well, beyond.
Yeah.
Think of this as your kind of shortcut to grasping these really critical, fast-moving changes.
That's exactly right. And our sources, they're showing it's not just random stuff happening here and there. It really looks like a synchronized global movement. And like you said, it's not just about posting online. It hits everything. How you log in, what you can actually see, even how you talk to people privately. This fundamental shift, really, in the internet's architecture, as we've known it. It's building this whole new digital landscape for all of us to figure out. Right. And as we try to untangle all this, it's worth remembering that, dealing with these digital risks, it's a real challenge. So if you're looking for solid security solutions or maybe deeper insights into navigating all these global rules, we really do recommend checking out our sponsors. That's www.cisomarketplace.com for security tools and www.compliancehub.wiki for help with those global regulations. They can be incredibly helpful resources. Okay, so let's kick off this deep dive down under. In Australia, they seem to be really pioneering things here. They've got this Digital ID Act 2024. It kicked off December 1st, 2024, setting up a national digital ID system. But it's not just that, right? It's tied into these tough new e-safety laws. They're mandating age verification for social media, even search engines, by December 27th, 2025. So what's the immediate sort of impact of this legal structure?
Well, the structure itself is pretty solid, quite robust. They've clearly defined the roles. You've got the ACCC, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, as the main digital ID regulator, and then the OAIC, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. They're overseeing the privacy side of things, and it's rolling out in phases. Phase 1 started December 2024, focused on government bodies. Then Phase 2, by December 2026, that's when the private sector can start applying to join in, which, really broadens the whole thing out.
Okay, so practically, how does this work for, say, just a regular user? We hear about this MyID system. Can you break down those strength levels for us?
Sure, the MyID system lets you create a digital identity, but the strength varies. Depends what you need it for. Basic is, well, basic, limited access. Standard needs one ID document, like your driver's license. But strong, that's the full works. Needs a passport, other documents, and a real-time face verification check, to prove you're actually there, live, not just a picture.
Right. And the e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman Grant, she's been pretty clear about age checks, especially that under 16 social media ban coming in late 2025. What are the main ways she sees platforms doing this, and what are the sort of knock-on effects?
Yeah, she's outlined three main paths: using traditional ID documents, analyzing your behavioral signals online, or using biometrics like face scans. But she does stress, and this is important, that every single method has pretty significant privacy implications, especially around collecting all that data. And what's really interesting, or maybe concerning depending on your view, is that Google and Microsoft, they're set to enforce age and ID checks for anyone logged in, which means basically it's going to affect, and I quote, virtually all Australian internet users. So it's not just another hoop to jump through. It fundamentally changes online anonymity in Australia. Because if you need ID even for major search engines, the government, kind of through these private companies, gets this unprecedented view into who is searching for what. It really pushes digital freedom into a new, much more monitored space.
That's a huge point. And the technical side, the privacy risks, they're massive, aren't they? I mean, facial recognition tech, it's not perfect.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's got known error rates.
Yeah.
Sometimes, trials show up to 30% errors.
Yeah.
And it works differently depending on age, maybe even voice changes. But the bigger issue, I think, is centralizing all that data. It's ironic, isn't it? You build these systems supposedly for security, but by putting vast amounts of personal biometric data all in one place, what you create this giant blinking target for hackers. It completely shifts where the biggest digital risks are. It's less about individual mistakes now and more about these huge systemic vulnerabilities. It just opened the door wide for surveillance.
Yeah, which leads us neatly to this big private player, AU10TIX, an Israeli company doing identity verification for some huge platforms you probably use. What's their role exactly?
Oh, they're definitely a major player. They work with X, LinkedIn, PayPal, Airbnb, Bird, Fiverr, Upwork, a lot of big names. They're key for helping these platforms meet those KYC, know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering rules, basically making sure users are who they say they are and flagging dodgy financial stuff.
And they have this controversial tech called digital twins. What on earth are those? How do they work?
Right, digital twins, they're basically these super detailed digital profiles of people using biometrics, identity data. They use advanced AI, biometric checks, deepfake detection, and they cross-reference everything against government databases. It's comprehensive. They use real-time biometric authentication, those liveness checks to make sure it's really you, plus strict checks on documents like passports, driver's licenses, facial recognition with forensic detectors, and it's all layered with fraud detection systems. It's pretty intense stuff.
And that tech's already stirred up trouble, hasn't it? Especially with X, formerly Twitter, using AU10TIX for their government ID verification. Weren't there some pretty serious user claims?
There were, yeah. Unverified claims, mind you, circulating on X itself, suggesting that data given to AU10TIX might end up with Israeli intelligence agencies. Elon Musk actually responded, said he'd look into it, acknowledging the concern. But the crucial thing here, regardless of those specific claims, is that centralizing identity data always centralizes risk. And AU10TIX themselves had a major security lapse that really highlights this. They accidentally exposed user identity info names, dates of birth, nationality, ID types, even images for people using Coinbase, Fiverr, LinkedIn, PayPal, Upwork. Why? Because an admin login was left unsecured for, get this, 18 months. Now, the company says they fixed it, claims no client data was actually accessed. But it definitely shows the inherent dangers of these centralized systems, and it raises big questions about, data sovereignty.
Wow, so even if the goal is security, concentrating all that sensitive info just creates this massive vulnerability, really hammers home the need for strong security.
Exactly. Understanding these risks is absolutely vital for any business online today. It's why doing proper checks on your vendors, having really strong security practices, it's just not optional anymore. And actually, resources like www.cisomarketplace.com can be super valuable here, helping find those trusted security solutions and manage these complicated digital risks.
Okay, let's hop over to Europe now. Starting with the UK and their approach to online safety. Their Online Safety Act, the age verification part for adult sites kicked in July 25th, 2025. What happens if platforms don't play ball?
Oh, the penalties are serious. We're talking huge fines up to 18 million or even 10% of their global turnover, whichever is higher. And the ways they can verify age are specific. Facial age estimation, checks using financial details, government ID, mobile network data, or these new digital identity wallets.
And how are the platforms actually reacting? Are they complying? It's a mixed bag, really. Pornhub, for example, they're using a third-party verification service. Reddit brought in age checks using a service called Persona, which often means handing over government ID. But others, like Beleza and BitChute, they just pulled out of the UK market altogether, said it was too much, too invasive. And remember, this act isn't just about adult sites. It covers social media, video sharing, dating apps, forums. It's changing the whole online environment in the UK.
Which brings us to something pretty concerning, that sources mention this idea of a digital thought police. Apparently, the UK Home Office set up this elite team of police officers just to monitor social media for anti-migrant sentiment, looking for early signs of potential civil unrest. How's that gone down?
Well, the reaction was pretty immediate. Proton VPN reported this massive spike, over 1,400%, in UK signups literally within hours of the act starting enforcement on July 25th. People were scrambling to protect their privacy. It really shows that tension between the stated goal of safety and people's feelings about their individual freedom online. And there's a really stark example in the sources about how justice is being applied, isn't there? This case of Lucy Connolly, a childminder getting 31 months in prison for a deleted social media post expressing anti-migrant sentiment when she was upset. And you compare that to, well, much lighter sentences for people convicted of actual serious child abuse. What does that comparison suggest?
Yeah, that comparison, as laid out in the sources, is jarring. It suggests potentially a justice system where speech crimes, as they're sometimes called, could lead to tougher sentences than horrific physical crimes against children. It definitely raises big questions about, proportionality in sentencing and how we even define harm in this digital age. Kind of forces a rethink of justice itself.
Okay, shifting now to the wider EU and the Digital Services Act, the DSA. You mentioned it has this extraterritorial impact. It affects companies outside the EU too. How does that work? What are the global effects?
Right, the Brussels effect. Because the EU market is so huge, its regulations often become the de facto global standard. It's just easier for big companies to apply the EU rules everywhere rather than manage different systems. So the DSA is making companies change their content moderation policies worldwide, not just for EU users. And this has caused concern. The U.S. House Judiciary Committee put out a report July 25, 2025, saying the DSA forces global censorship and infringes on American free speech rights. They even pointed out that sometimes pretty harmless political statements were getting labeled as illegal hate speech under these rules.
Wow, that's a major friction point for global free speech ideas. But then there's this other EU proposal, the really controversial chat control. What's that about?
Ah, yes, chat control. Officially, it's the Regulation on Child Sexual Abuse Material Detection. But it's deeply controversial. The proposal could mean scanning all private messages. Yes, even the encrypted ones, before they get encrypted. There might be a vote on this as soon as October 14th, 2025. This idea, client-side scanning, it essentially makes your own phone or computer scan your messages for problematic content before it's sent securely. It basically guts the whole principle of end-to-end encryption by saying encryption itself, or wanting anonymity, makes you high risk.
That sounds incredibly invasive. I assume there's pushback.
Oh, huge pushback. Countries like Germany and Luxembourg are strongly against it, along with tons of privacy groups and major messaging apps like Signal and Telegram. They've basically said they'll pull out of the EU entirely rather than build backdoors into their encryption. They argue it would make their services insecure for everyone and break their fundamental promise of privacy.
Yeah, trying to keep up with all these different laws, the UK's Act, the EU's DSA, it must feel like a nightmare for businesses operating globally.
Absolutely. It's a full-time job, practically. Which is why, again, resources that help make sense of it all are so important. If you're trying to navigate international compliance, something like www.compliancehub.wiki could be really useful for understanding and comparing all these different complex rules around the world. Helps you stay on the right side of things.
Okay, let's look at some specific flashpoints now. Brazil is having this big fight with X, right? Twitter as was. What's the core issue there?
Yeah, it's pretty heated. Justice Alexander de Moraes ordered X to appoint a legal rep in Brazil. Elon Musk refused. So now there are threats of a total ban in Brazil, and X has actually closed its office there. Musk calls himself a free speech absolutist and says the court orders to suspend certain accounts one's linked to alleged misinformation or censorship. It's escalated to the point where individuals in Brazil face daily fines, pretty hefty ones, up to about $8,874 if they're caught using a VPN to get onto X. Even though using VPNs itself is kind of legally gray there, it's a really clear example of a government trying to exert control over information flow and platform compliance within its borders.
And this Brazil situation feels like part of this bigger picture, this global digital crackdown the sources talk about. It's not just governments anymore. Payment processors are playing a role, too.
That's a really key point. Yeah, companies like MasterCard and Visa are effectively becoming internet police in a way. They're putting pressure on platforms. Gaming platforms like Steam and itch.io were examples cited, telling them to remove adult-themed content. And the threat, they'll stop processing payments for them, which is, an existential threat for many platforms. Itch.io did initially take stuff down, but then there was a big user backlash, and they relisted it. So there's some resistance possible, but that pressure from the financial choke points is definitely real.
And it's not just about content rules. It's getting technical, too. ISPs blocking VPNs, stuff like that. Exactly. It's an arms race. We're seeing internet service providers actively blocking access to VPN websites in various parts of the world. And look at Italy's Piracy Shield system. It's designed to block websites hosting pirated movies, music, TV shows incredibly quickly, like within 30 minutes. But the EU itself has raised flags, worried about it violating fundamental rights, maybe blocking legitimate sites by mistake. It all ties back to controlling information access.
And where does AI fit into this? You mentioned YouTube using AI to guess user ages based on what they watch.
Yeah, that's a really interesting, maybe slightly creepy development. It's pure behavioral profiling, isn't it? It goes way beyond just asking, are you 18? It's using your viewing habits to make inferences about you. It just shows how sophisticated these monitoring and profiling tools are becoming.
So when we weave all these threads together, the digital IDs, the age checks, the content policing, the financial pressure, the AI profiling, what's the big picture our source material suggests? The sources call it the Great Digital Convergence. It's this idea of a synchronized global effort combining several key things: universal digital identity systems, the rise of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which could allow, theoretically, much greater control over money flows, widespread content censorship, and measures against anonymity. Taken together, these four pillars are described as creating an Orwellian infrastructure. That's the term used. An infrastructure designed for monitoring and ultimately controlling human behavior. Some sources go so far as to call it the end of digital privacy, or even digital feudalism, a future where your digital ID and online behavior dictate your access to basic services. It's a pretty stark vision.
It's definitely clear that this push for online safety, however well meant sometimes, is really clashing hard with privacy, free expression, and just the ability to be anonymous online. Our sources paint a picture where the building blocks for, well, total digital control are being put in place piece by piece all around the world right now.
Yeah. And the fundamental question isn't really, can technology create total surveillance? I mean, the sources suggest it clearly can. The real question is, will free societies actually choose to build and implement it? And maybe just as importantly, will individuals push back, or will they just accept this transformation, this shift towards a human existence that's managed, monitored, and controlled?
That's a really powerful thought to leave people with, and something to keep thinking about as all this continues to develop, which it certainly will. Whether you're trying to figure out the latest security solutions to keep your organization safe, or just trying to keep up with this constantly changing maze of international regulations, staying informed really is your best bet. We definitely encourage you to check out the resources available at www.cisomarketplace.com for those security needs, and www.compliancehub.wiki for help navigating global compliance. We'll be here, continuing to dive deep into the topics that really matter.